Let's start with a chilling fact. Beneath the infamous Alcatraz prison lies a dark and haunting legacy that even its harshest critics found too extreme. This is the story of a place that was supposed to punish America's most hardened criminals, but instead became a symbol of cruelty and psychological torment. Before we dive into the grim details, do us a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss our deep dives into stories like this one. Now let's rewind to uncover the shocking history of Alcatraz and the dungeon that even the harshest of prisons couldn't justify. Alcatraz, perched on a small island in San Francisco Bay, opened in 1934 as a federal prison designed to isolate and break the spirits of America's most dangerous criminals. The idea was simple: cut them off from the world by placing them in a fortress surrounded by icy waters and treacherous currents. Escape seemed impossible, and for years the prison's reputation as an impenetrable fortress loomed large. But what made Alcatraz truly infamous wasn't just the isolation, it was the brutal measures taken to enforce order. Initially, the prison lacked dedicated spaces for punishing unruly inmates. Troublemakers were thrown into isolation cells in D Block and A Block, areas already notorious for their bleak and oppressive atmosphere. But as the need for stricter punishment grew, Alcatraz turned to a chilling alternative: the dungeon. Below the main cell house, hidden from the public eye, lay a military segregation unit from the island's earlier days. Prisoners called it the dungeon, and with good reason. This was no ordinary isolation, it was a descent into darkness, both literal and psychological. Inmates sent to the dungeon endured conditions so appalling that the stories quickly spread among prisoners and even leaked to the outside world. They were shackled, left to stand for hours or days in pitch-black darkness, with only the occasional beatings and scraps of food to remind them they were still alive. Some were confined here for up to 14 days, their mental and physical health deteriorating rapidly. Rumors about the dungeon reached almost mythical proportions. Some prisoners even claimed it had been built by the Spanish Inquisition as a torture chamber. While this wasn't true, the tales alone added to the horror surrounding the place. By the late 1930s, word of Alcatraz's harsh punishments began to reach the ears of the public and government officials. Among the most vocal critics was U.S. Attorney General Frank Murphy, who made it his mission to expose the institution's brutality. Murphy described Alcatraz as fostering a psychology that builds up a sinister and vicious attitude among the prisoners. This growing scrutiny culminated in a decision in 1942 to officially shut down the dungeon. The Bureau of Prisons declared the use of such punishment to be cruel and unusual, a violation of basic human rights, even for hardened criminals. While Alcatraz remained operational for 2 more decades, this marked the beginning of a slow shift toward more humane treatment of its prisoners. Following the closure of the dungeon, Alcatraz implemented some changes to improve prisoner conditions. One of the strictest rules, the enforced silence, was relaxed slightly. Prisoners were now allowed to hold quiet conversations, although loud talking, shouting, singing, or even whistling remained prohibited. These changes were a small step toward humanizing life on the rock, but the prison was far from a sanctuary. In the 1940s and 50s, over $1 million were spent upgrading the prison's facilities. Much of this went into remodeling D Block, where isolation cells were improved. These efforts were part of an ongoing attempt to salvage Alcatraz's reputation as a federal institution. However, it wasn't enough to save the prison. By 1963, Alcatraz had become too expensive to maintain. The harsh environment of the island took a toll on the prison's infrastructure, and the cost of transporting supplies and personnel was unsustainable. The government decided to shut it down, leaving behind a complex legacy of fear, punishment, and reform. Today, Alcatraz stands as a tourist attraction, drawing millions of visitors eager to learn about its storied past. It's a place where the walls still seem to echo with the screams of those who endured its punishments. a stark reminder of the darker chapters in America's justice system. The story of Alcatraz and its infamous dungeon offers more than just historical intrigue. It's a sobering reflection on the balance between justice and humanity. It forces us to ask, how far is too far when punishing those who have committed heinous crimes? As you walk through the cold halls of Alcatraz today, you can feel the weight of those questions. If this story left you as intrigued as it did us, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. Your support helps us uncover more incredible tales from history, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and join our community. Together, we'll continue exploring the most fascinating and thought-provoking stories the world has to offer.